They called him the Broken Wolf. For 10 years, the Blackwood Pack pretended he didn't exist, while his father, Alpha Robert, threw a lavish ball to find a new Luna. His own son sat in a wheelchair in the darkest corner of the room, scarred and silent. The most beautiful, high-ranking women in the state walked right past him, laughing, stepping over his legs like he was furniture. They wanted the title, not the burden. But they didn't know the truth. They didn't know that the cripple they were mocking was the only thing standing between them and a massacre. And they certainly didn't expect Myla O'Connell, a penniless, invisible Omega, to drop her serving tray, walk across that floor, and do the one thing that would shatter their entire world. This is the true story of the Blackwood selection. The chandeliers of the Blackwood estate hadn't sparkled this brightly since the end of the Great War of the Packs. Crystal teardrops hung suspended from the ceiling, catching the light and scattering it over a sea of designer silk, velvet, and the heavy, intoxicating scent of expensive perfume mixed with pheromones. It was the selection ball, a barbaric, beautiful tradition. Alpha Robert Blackwood stood on the grand staircase, a glass of 50-year-old Scotch in his hand. He looked like a king, silver-haired and broad-shouldered, radiating a power that made lesser wolves lower their gazes. But his eyes weren't on the festivities. They were darting nervously toward the shadows of the ballroom, where a single figure sat isolated. Liam Blackwood, the Alpha's firstborn. The disappointment. Liam sat in a heavy, motorized wheelchair. His legs, covered by a black blanket, hadn't moved in 6 years. A jagged scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw, pulling his lip into a permanent, cynical sneer. He held a glass of water, his knuckles white. He hadn't wanted to come. He knew what this was, a meat market where he was the spoiled goods no one wanted to buy. Keep the glasses full, Myla. Move it. Myla O'Connell flinched as the head of staff, a sour woman named Mrs. Higgins, snapped her fingers. Myla adjusted her grip on the heavy silver tray, laden with champagne flutes. She was an Omega, the lowest of the low in the Blackwood hierarchy. Her uniform was a dull grey, meant to blend into the wallpaper. She had no wolf, or so everyone thought. She was just 22, with messy brown hair tied back and eyes the colour of rain-washed slate. "Yes, Mrs. Higgins," Myla murmured. She weaved through the crowd, invisible. She heard the whispers. The elite she-wolves from neighbouring territories, the Silver River Pack, the Stone Ridge clan, were gossiping ruthlessly. "Is that him?" Tiffany Roche, the daughter of a wealthy beta from the south, giggled. She was stunning, wearing a dress of crimson silk that clung to her curves like a second skin. She gestured with her wine-glass toward Liam. "The Alpha's son." "That's the one," her friend snickered. "Tragic, really. Heard he can't even shift. A wolf trapped in a broken human shell. Can you imagine being mated to that? You'd be a nursemaid, not a Luna." "I'm here for the title," Tiffany said, tossing her blonde hair. "If I have to marry the second son, or even the Alpha himself, I'll do it. But I'm not pushing a wheelchair for the rest of my life." Myla felt a spike of anger in her chest, so sharp it nearly made her drop the tray. She knew Liam. Not socially, she was a servant, he was royalty, but she knew him. She cleaned his quarters in the East Wing. She knew he spent his nights reading history and strategy, not brooding. She knew he had a collection of rare orchids he tended to with shaking hands. She knew he was kind when no one was watching. She moved toward his corner. The area around him was a dead zone, a 10-foot radius of rejection. "Champagne, sir?" Mila asked softly. Liam didn't look up. "I don't drink alcohol, Omega. It interferes with the medication." His voice was rough, like gravel grinding together. "It's sparkling cider, sir," Mila whispered. "I swapped the bottle. I know the medication makes you nauseous with alcohol." For the first time, Liam looked up. His eyes were a startling, piercing blue, filled with a deep, ancient exhaustion. He looked at the girl in the grey uniform, really looked at her. "You're the one who leaves the lavender on my pillow," he said. It wasn't a question. "It helps with sleep," she said, her cheeks flushing. "Why bother?" Liam scoffed, looking back at the crowd of women who were pointedly ignoring him. "They're all waiting for me to leave so they can throw themselves at my cousin, Brody." Brody, the golden boy. He was standing near the buffet, flexing his muscles, surrounded by a harem of giggling candidates. He was strong, fast, and cruel. Mila knew Brody well. He liked to trip the Omega servants when he was bored. "They don't see you," Mila said, risking her job by speaking out of turn. "They see a cripple," Liam corrected. "Then they are blind," Mila whispered. Before Liam could respond, the music stopped. The heavy drums of the ceremony began. Alpha Robert tapped a spoon against his glass. The room fell silent. It was time. "Welcome, friends, allies, and beautiful guests," Alpha Robert boomed. "Tonight is about the future of the Blackwood Pack. My son, Liam, is of age. By the laws of our ancestors, he must choose a mate, or a mate must choose him, to secure the succession." The tension in the room was suffocating. Everyone knew the rule. If Liam didn't find a mate tonight, the succession would pass to his cousin, Brody. "Ladies," Robert said, his voice straining with a hope that sounded painful, "the floor is yours. Who will step forward to claim the heart of the next Alpha?" Silence. Excruciating, heavy silence. 100 beautiful women stood in their designer gowns, clutching their purses, looking everywhere except at the man in the wheelchair. Some studied the ceiling, others whispered to their neighbors. Brody, standing by the bar, let out a short, barking laugh. "Come on, ladies, don't be shy. He doesn't bite. He can't even catch you." A ripple of cruel laughter went through the room. Alpha Robert's face turned purple. "Is there no one?" he roared, the Alpha command vibrating the windows. "Among the daughters of the noblest lines, is there no one with the courage to stand by a Blackwood?" Tiffany Roche stepped forward. For a second, Robert looked relieved. "Alpha Robert," Tiffany said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "We all respect the Blackwood name. But let's be realistic." She turned to Liam, a look of mock pity on her face. "Liam needs a caretaker, a professional. We are queens, we are warriors. We cannot be tied to dead weight." The insult hung in the air like poison gas. Liam didn't flinch. He just gripped the armrests of his chair, his knuckles turning from white to blue. He was used to the pain. He lived in it. "I will step forward," Tiffany continued, turning her back on Liam to face Brody. "But for the true future of this pack, I claim Brody Blackwood." The room erupted. It was a coup, a public declaration that Liam was unfit. Brody grinned, stepping forward to wrap an arm around Tiffany's waist. "Smart girl," Brody smirked. "Father won't like it, but the pack needs strength, Uncle Robert. Not a charity case." Alpha Robert looked defeated. He looked at his son, his eyes filled with apology. "Liam." Liam engaged the motor of his chair. The whine of the electric engine was the only sound in the silent ballroom. "I understand, Father," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "I will sign the abdication papers in the morning." He began to turn his chair toward the exit. The crowd parted, not out of respect, but to avoid touching him. Crash. The sound of a silver tray hitting the marble floor shattered the silence. Champagne flutes exploded, sending shards of glass and sparkling liquid everywhere. Every head turned. Myla stood there. Her hands were trembling, but her chin was high. She had dropped the tray. "You act like royalty," Myla's voice rang out, shaking but gaining strength. "But you act like vultures." "Who is that?" Tiffany sneered. "Someone get the maid out of here." "I am Myla O'Connell," she said, stepping over the broken glass. She didn't look at the Alpha. She didn't look at Brody. She walked straight toward Liam. "Myla, stop," Liam hissed under his breath as she approached. "Don't do this. They'll destroy you." She stopped directly in front of his wheelchair. She was small, impoverished, wearing a uniform stained with cider, standing before the gathered elite of the werewolf world. She dropped to one knee, not in submission, but to be at eye level with him. "I don't see dead weight," Myla said, her voice carrying to the rafters. "I see the man who organized the food drives during the last winter famine. I see the man who negotiated the peace treaty with the southern vampires from his study while his cousin was out drinking. I see the Alpha." She reached out and took his scarred hand. "If none of these queens are woman enough to see the wolf inside," Myla said, looking into his blue eyes, "then I will be. I choose Liam Blackwood." The uproar was instant. It was chaos. "An Omega!" Brody shouted, his face twisting into a snarl. "This is a joke! A servant cannot mate with the bloodline!" Alpha Robert looked stunned. He looked at Myla, then at his son. He saw the way Liam was looking at her, like she was the first sunrise he had seen in years. "Silence!" Robert bellowed. "You can't allow this, Uncle," Brody argued. "It pollutes the line. She's a scrub. A nobody." "The law states," Robert said slowly, "that any female of the pack may present herself. It does not specify rank." "She's an embarrassment," Tiffany shrieked. "Look at her." "I accept," Liam said. His voice cut through the noise. He squeezed Mila's hand so hard it hurt. "I accept her claim." Brody kicked a table over. "Fine. You want the cripple? You can have him. But he can't lead this pack from a wheelchair with a maid by his side. If you accept her, Liam, you accept that you are weak. You are unfit." Brody turned to the pack elders, a group of 5 old wolves, watching from the balcony. "I challenge his competency. A wolf who cannot hunt, cannot lead. I demand the right of the wilderness." The color drained from Alpha Robert's face. The right of the wilderness was an ancient, brutal test. The couple was stripped of resources and sent to the outer borders, the dead lands, for one lunar cycle. If they survived, the pack had to accept them. But no disabled wolf had ever survived the Deadlands. The rogue wolves and grizzlies there were merciless. "Brody, this is a death sentence," Robert warned. "If he is Alpha," Brody smiled cruelly, "he will survive. Unless he really is just a broken human." Liam looked at Myla. "Reject me," he whispered frantically. "Walk away now. You don't know what they are asking." Myla stood up, still holding his hand. She looked at Brody with a fire that shocked everyone. "When do we leave?" 2 hours later. The heavy iron gates of the Blackwood estate slammed shut behind them. It was raining, a cold, freezing sleet that bit into the skin. They had been given a beat-up old truck, a small box of supplies, and directions to a derelict cabin 10 miles into the dense forest of the Deadlands. Liam maneuvered his wheelchair from the truck bed up the rotting wooden ramp of the cabin. The inside was freezing. Dust coated everything. There was a fireplace, but no wood. Mila immediately set to work. She didn't complain. She found an old broom and started sweeping. She gathered dead branches from the porch to start a fire. Liam sat in the center of the room, watching her. The shame was eating him alive. "Why did you do it?" he asked into the darkness. The fire was crackling now, casting long shadows on his scarred face. Mila warmed her hands by the flames. Because I was tired of watching them lie about you. You've sentenced yourself to death, Mela. I can't protect you. If a rogue comes, I can't even stand up. I don't need you to stand up, Mila said. She walked over to him and knelt down again. I need you to tell me the truth, the real truth. What are you talking about? Mila reached out and touched his legs. Liam flinched, expecting pain. I'm an Omega, Mila said softly. We don't have strength, Liam. We have senses. We are healers. For months, when I clean your room, I smell something. Not sickness, not paralysis. She rolled up the pant leg of his trousers. There, tracing the veins of his shins, were black lines, pulsating faintly. They looked like ink moving under the skin. That's not a spinal injury, Mila whispered, her eyes widening in horror. That's wolfsbane infusion, but ancient, modified. Liam looked away, his jaw clenched. 6 years ago, the ambush. I didn't just get hit by a car, Mila. I was injected. It's a curse. It locks my wolf away. It eats my energy. If I try to shift, the poison burns my nerves. That's why I can't walk. Who did this? I don't know, Liam admitted. But the doctor, Dr. Aris Thorne, he's the pack physician. He's been treating me for 6 years. He gives me the shots that are supposed to manage the pain. Mila's eyes went cold. She stood up, grabbed the bag of medicine Liam had brought with him, and pulled out a vial of clear liquid. She uncorked it and sniffed. She recoiled, coughing. He's not treating you, Liam, she said, her voice trembling with rage. He's keeping you this way. This is concentrated nightshade and liquid silver. He's been poisoning you every single day for 6 years to keep your wolf in a coma. Liam stared at the vial. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Brody, he whispered. Brody and Dr. Thorne are close. We aren't going to die out here, Mila said, smashing the vial into the fireplace. The flames roared green for a second. We are going to detox you. It's going to hurt. It might kill you. But if we do this, your legs, your wolf, they might come back. Liam looked at the small, fierce woman who had given up everything for him. For the first time in 6 years, he didn't feel broken. He felt dangerous. Do it, Liam said. The first 3 days in the cabin were not romantic. They were hell. Mila used every scrap of knowledge she had. She foraged in the Deadlands, a dangerous risk, searching for Veritas root and moon fern, rare plants that grew only in cursed soil. She brewed foul-smelling teas. She made poultices. Liam screamed. The withdrawal from the poison was violent. His body convulsed. His fever spiked to 106 degrees. He hallucinated battles from the past. He thrashed so hard he fell out of his wheelchair, clawing at the wooden floorboards. Mila was there every second. She held him down when he shook. She wiped the black sweat from his brow. She sang old lullabies to calm him when the pain was too much. She didn't sleep. She barely ate, giving the meager rations to him. On the 4th night, the fever broke. Liam lay on the mattress they had dragged in front of the fire. He was gaunt, pale, but his breathing was steady. Mila, he croaked. She was dozing, sitting up against the wall, a hatchet in her lap in case of intruders. She jerked awake. I'm here. My legs, he whispered. They burn. That's the nerves waking up, she said, crawling over to him. Or, it's the damage becoming permanent. I don't know, Liam. I'm just a maid. No, he gritted his teeth. It's a different burn. Suddenly, a howl ripped through the night outside. It wasn't a normal wolf howl. It was ragged, hungry, and close. Rogue wolves. Mila grabbed the hatchet. Stay down, she ordered. Mila, no! She ran to the window. 3 massive, mangy wolves were circling the cabin. They smelled the sickness. They smelled easy prey. One of them lunged at the door. The wood splintered. "There's nowhere to hide!" A gravelly voice yelled from outside. "Brody sends his regards." They weren't random rogues. They were assassins sent to finish the job. The door burst open. A grey wolf the size of a bear charged in, jaws snapping. Mila swung the hatchet, catching it in the shoulder, but the wolf backhanded her with a massive paw. She flew across the room, hitting the wall with a sickening crunch. "Mila!" Liam roared. She slumped to the floor, dazed, blood trickling from her temple. The wolf turned its yellow eyes toward Liam, who was dragging himself across the floor. "Look at you!" The wolf snarled, shifting into a half-human form. It was a mercenary named Kane, the Alpha's son, crawling like a worm. Kane raised his claws to deliver the killing blow. Liam looked at Mila, unconscious in the corner. The rage that exploded in his chest wasn't human. It was ancient. It was the result of 6 years of torture, 6 years of silence, and the terrifying fear of losing the only person who mattered. The poison was gone. The dam broke. Crack. The sound wasn't the floorboards. It was Liam's spine realigning. His bones snapped and reshaped with terrifying speed. Fur erupted from his skin, not the grey of a common wolf, but a pitch black, darker than the night outside. Kane stepped back, his eyes widening. "Impossible!" Liam didn't just shift. He exploded into his form. He was massive, easily a head taller than Kane. His eyes were glowing violet, the mark of an alpha of the blood. He stood up, on 2 legs at first, then dropping to 4. He didn't howl. He roared. The cabin in the Deadlands became a slaughterhouse within seconds. Kane, the mercenary who had mocked Liam moments ago, didn't even have time to shift fully. The massive black beast that Liam had become, a creature of shadow and fury, lunged. It was a blur of violence. Liam's jaws clamped around Kane's shoulder, crushing bone and Kevlar armor alike. With a toss of his massive head, Liam threw the 200-pound mercenary through the open window as if he were a rag doll. The other 2 wolves, sensing the shift in power, hesitated. In the wild, hierarchy is absolute. They were facing an alpha of the blood, a genetic rarity that hadn't been seen in the Blackwood line for 3 generations. The sheer pressure of Liam's aura, the alpha command, forced them to whimper. They dropped to their bellies, ears flattened, submitting to the predator they had been sent to kill. But Liam wasn't in a forgiving mood. He snarled, a sound that vibrated the floorboards, and the 2 wolves scrambled backward, tails tucked, fleeing into the stormy night, abandoning their mission. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the crackling of the dying fire and the howling wind. The massive black wolf turned. His violet eyes, glowing with supernatural luminescence, scanned the room until they landed on the small, crumpled figure in the corner. Mila. The rage in the wolf's eyes instantly extinguished, replaced by a frantic, whining concern. The beast dissolved. Bones cracked and reshaped again, shrinking down until Liam was left panting on the floor in his human form, naked, shivering, but standing. For the first time in 6 years, he was standing on his own 2 legs. He didn't care about his nudity. He didn't care about the cold. He stumbled toward Mila, his legs feeling strange and new, like tools he had forgotten how to use. He fell to his knees beside her. "Mila," he choked out. He reached for her pulse. It was there, but faint. Blood matted her hairline. Her breathing was shallow. The hit from the mercenary had given her a concussion, maybe worse. "No, no, no," Liam whispered, pulling her into his arms. "You don't get to die. You saved me. You don't get to die." He did the only thing he could think of. He bit his own wrist, tearing the vein. He pressed his bleeding wrist to her lips. In wolf lore, the blood of an alpha had restorative properties, supercharged with healing platelets and adrenaline. It was forbidden to share it with an omega, but Liam didn't give a damn about the laws. "Drink," he commanded softly. Instinct took over. Mela swallowed. The metallic taste woke her senses. She groaned, her eyelids fluttering open. The first thing she saw was Liam, shirtless, covered in dust and blood, but looking at her with an intensity that burned. "Liam," she whispered, You're standing." "I'm standing," he cried, tears mixing with the grime on his face. He buried his face in her neck. "You did it. You brought him back." Mila tried to sit up, but the room spun. "The wolves." "Gone," Liam said, his voice hardening. "But they will report back to Brody. He knows we aren't dead. He knows the assassination failed. We have to move." "We can't," Mila grimaced, clutching her head. "We have no car. The truck is dead. It's 10 miles to the border." Liam looked at the door, then back at her. A dark, terrifying resolve settled over his features. "We aren't running away, Mila," he said. "We're going back." "Back? To the estate? They'll kill you on sight." "No." Liam stood up. He walked to the broken mirror hanging on the wall. He looked at his reflection. The scar was still there, but the hollowness in his eyes was gone. The man staring back was a king who had just reclaimed his crown. "Brody thinks I'm a cripple in a cabin," Liam said, low and dangerous. "He thinks his hit squad did the job. He'll be celebrating. He won't expect the monster he just created to walk through the front door." Liam turned to Mila and extended his hand. "Do you trust me?" Mila looked at the hand of the man she had served tea to for 3 years, the hand of the man she had saved. "With my life," she said. "Good." Liam smiled, a sharp, predatory grin. "Because tonight, we are going to burn their world to the ground." The Blackwood estate was in full swing. It had been 3 days since Liam and Mila were exiled, to mourn the tragic and entirely fabricated news that the Alpha's son had perished in the harsh wilderness due to his fragile condition. Brody had organized a memorial. But it wasn't a memorial. It was a coronation. Brody stood at the head of the banquet hall, wearing a tuxedo that cost more than Mila's entire life earnings. Tiffany Roach hung on his arm, draped in black silk that looked more like cocktail attire than morning wear. She was drinking champagne, laughing with the other socialites. "It's really for the best," Tiffany was saying to a group of elders. Liam was suffering. Now the pack can be strong again. Alpha Robert sat at the head table, looking 10 years older. He hadn't spoken all night. He stared into his wine, guilt eating him alive. He had let them send his son away. He had signed the papers. "A toast!" Brody shouted, raising his glass. The music died down. "To the memory of my cousin, and to the future. As your new acting alpha, I promise to lead the Blackwood Pack into a new era of prosperity." "To the Alpha!" the crowd cheered. The heavy double doors of the banquet hall groaned. Everyone turned. They expected the caterers with the dessert cart. Instead, the doors were flung open with such force that the hinges screamed. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the stormy night outside, was a man. He wore tattered clothes, jeans stained with mud, and a flannel shirt ripped at the sleeves. He was unshaven. He was dirty. But he was standing tall. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. A wine glass shattered. Liam walked in. His stride was long, powerful, and predatory. There was no wheelchair, no limp. He walked like a tiger stalking through high grass. By his side, holding his hand, was Mila. She looked battered, a bandage around her head, but her eyes were fierce. "Liam," Alpha Robert whispered, standing up so fast his chair toppled over. "My boy?" Brody froze. His face went pale, then red. "Ghost," he muttered. Then he shouted, "Guards! Seize them! These are imposters! Rogues wearing the faces of the dead!" 4 security guards rushed forward. They were big wolves, loyal to Brody's payroll. Liam didn't even slow down. "Kneel," Liam said. He didn't shout it. He didn't have to. He projected his alpha aura, the voice of command, like a physical shockwave. The guards slammed into the floor mid-stride, their wolves forcing them into submission. They whined, covering their heads. The sheer potency of Liam's power cracked the marble floor tiles beneath his boots. The entire room fell into a terrified silence. Liam walked straight up to the head table. He stopped in front of Brody and Tiffany. Tiffany was trembling, her glass rattling against her teeth. "You look like you've seen a ghost, cousin," Liam said, his voice smooth and cold as ice. "How?" Brody stammered, stepping back. The poison is gone," Liam said. "Dr. Thorne did a good job masking it as a degenerative disease, didn't he? Where is the good doctor?" Liam scanned the room and locked eyes with the pack physician, who was trying to sneak out the side exit. "Don't move, Thorne," Liam commanded. The doctor froze against the wall, paralyzed by the Alpha order. Liam turned back to Brody. "You sent Kane to the cabin. You told him to make it look like an accident. But you made a mistake, Brody. You forgot that a Blackwood never dies easily." "Lies!" Brody screamed, trying to rally the crowd. "He's insane. He's clearly been possessed by a dark spirit. Look at him. He's dangerous." "I am dangerous," Liam agreed, stepping closer, towering over Brody. "I am the Alpha." "I challenge you!" Brody shrieked, desperate now. He ripped off his jacket. "If you are the Alpha, prove it. Trial by combat. Right here, right now." The crowd gasped. A challenge in the banquet hall was sacred. It could not be refused. Alpha Robert stepped forward. "Liam, you don't have to. You've just recovered." "No, Father," Liam said, not taking his eyes off Brody. "This ends tonight." Brody shifted instantly. He was a large wolf, russet-colored and bulky. He relied on brute strength. He lunged at Liam, jaws snapping for the throat, expecting the cripple to be slow. Liam didn't shift. He simply sidestepped. The move was a blur of speed. As Brody's wolf sailed past him, Liam grabbed the wolf by the scruff of the neck with one human hand and slammed him into the banquet table. Wood splintered. Food went flying. Brody yelped, scrabbling to get up. Liam grabbed a silver steak knife from the table. Brody lunged again. Liam ducked, spun, and drove his fist into the wolf's snout. The impact was like a gunshot. Brody crumbled, shifting back into his human form, clutching his broken nose, weeping on the floor. It hadn't even been a fight. It was a discipline. Liam stood over him, breathing evenly. He looked at the gathered crowd, the elites who had mocked him, the women who had ignored him. "This," Liam pointed to the sobbing man on the floor, "is what you wanted for your leader. A coward who poisons his own blood because he is afraid of a fair fight?" He turned to Tiffany. She shrank back. "And you," Liam said, "you wanted a title. You didn't care about the man. You stepped over my legs to get to him." Liam reached out and pulled Mila forward. The crowd parted for her now, fear and awe in their eyes. "This woman," Liam announced, his voice ringing with pride. "This Omega. She had nothing to gain. She had no status. She had every reason to walk away. But she walked into the fire for me. She healed me. She saved this pack from a tyrant." Liam took the Alpha signet ring off his father's stunned hand. Robert didn't resist. He was weeping with pride. Liam slid the ring onto his own finger. "I, Liam Blackwood, assume the title of Alpha, and I name Myla O'Connell as my Luna. Anyone who objects can join Brody in the dungeons." Silence. Then, slowly, the head elder knelt. Then the guards, then the guests. One by one, the entire room bowed to the Omega in the maid's uniform. The adrenaline of the red ball had faded, replaced by the cold, hard reality of governance. The Blackwood estate, once a palace of secrets and whispers, was now a hive of frantic activity. Liam Blackwood sat behind the massive mahogany desk in the Alpha's study. For 10 years, this room had been forbidden to him. Now, it was his command center. But the victory over his cousin Brody was only the physical battle. The political war was just beginning. Across the desk sat Dr. Aris Thorne. The physician looked small, his hands trembling as he held a glass of water he wasn't allowed to drink. Beside him, shackled in silver cuffs, was the head elder, Marcus, a man who had turned a blind eye to Brody's treachery for years in exchange for bribes. Mila stood by the window. She wasn't wearing the maid's uniform anymore. She wore a structured navy blazer and trousers, an outfit that commanded respect, though she still felt like an imposter in her own skin. "The toxicology reports are finished," Liam said, tossing a file onto the desk. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the silent room. "Liquid silver, nightshade, and a synthetic suppressor derived from vampire venom. You didn't just want to paralyze me, Thorne. You wanted to make sure I suffered every second of every day." Thorne began to weep. "Brody, he threatened my family. He said if I didn't keep you sedated, he would save it." Liam cut him off, his voice devoid of pity. "Brody is running for the border like a frightened rabbit." "You are here." Liam looked at Mila. "What is your will, my Luna?" The title sent a shockwave through the room. Elder Marcus scoffed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "She is not the Luna!" Marcus spat, his pride overriding his fear. "You may wear the ring, Liam, and you may have beaten that fool Brody in a brawl, but you cannot rewrite the laws of nature. An Omega cannot hold the spiritual weight of the Luna bond. It will kill her, or worse, it will rot the pack from the inside out." Liam's eyes flashed violet. He stood up, his shadow engulfing the elder. "Careful, Marcus." "He's right, Liam," Mela said softly. Liam whipped his head around. "Mila." She turned from the window. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. She walked to the center of the room. "The pack is confused. They are scared. They saw a maid drag the Alpha out of the mud. They are grateful, yes, but they don't respect me. To them, I am still the girl who scrubs the floors. If I take the title simply because you give it to me, I will always be the Alpha's pet. I won't be their queen." "So what are you suggesting?" Liam asked, his jaw tightening. "The trial of the Moonstone," Mila said. The room went deathly silent. Even Dr. Thorne stopped sniffling. The trial of the Moonstone was a myth, a ritual from the dark ages of the pack. It hadn't been invoked in 300 years because the fatality rate was absolute. The prospective Luna had to enter the sacred cavern beneath the waterfall, strip herself of all protection, and lay her hand upon the Moonstone, a jagged meteorite said to be a tear of the moon goddess herself. If the goddess accepted her spirit, the stone would glow. If she was unworthy or too weak, as Omegas were believed to be, the stone would burn her to ash. "Absolutely not," Liam roared, slamming his fist on the desk. "I forbid it. I just got you back. I am not sending you to be incinerated by a rock." "It is the only way to silence them," Mila said, pointing at the sneering elder. "If I survive the stone, no wolf in this hemisphere will dare question my rank. If I don't, then I was never meant to stand by your side." "You are my mate," Liam argued, coming around the desk to grab her shoulders. "That is enough." For you, it is enough, Myla whispered, reaching up to touch his scarred cheek. But for the park, for our children, I need to be more than just your wife, Liam. I need to be a Titan. She looked deep into his eyes. You fought the poison for 6 years. Let me fight this for 5 minutes. Liam looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the steel spine beneath the soft exterior. He realized then that he hadn't saved her in that cabin. She had saved him. And she was right. Tomorrow night, Liam whispered, his voice breaking, at the apex of the full moon. But if you feel even a spark of burning, you pull away. Promise me. I promise, Myla lied. She knew that once you touched the stone, you didn't let go until judgment was passed. The waterfalls of the Blackwood territory were roaring, swollen from the recent storms. Behind the curtain of crashing water lay the entrance to the cavern, a place damp with moss and ancient magic. The entire pack had gathered on the rocky banks of the river. Hundreds of wolves stood in silence, holding torches. The flickering firelight cast long, dancing shadows against the cliff face. They were there to witness an execution or a miracle. Most bet on the execution. Tiffany Roche was there, hiding in the back, her face hidden by a hood. She had snuck back across the border, unable to stay away, desperate to see the maid fail. Liam stood at the cavern entrance. He was shirtless, ritualistic markings painted in white ash across his chest. He looked like a warrior god, but his hands were shaking. Mila emerged from the changing tent. She wore nothing but a thin white shift, soaked instantly by the spray of the waterfall. She was barefoot. Without jewelry, without makeup, she looked incredibly small against the backdrop of the jagged rocks and the roaring river. "The Omega approaches," Elder Marcus announced, his voice booming over the sound of the water. He held the ceremonial staff. "Mila O'Connell seeks the judgment of the goddess. If she burns, the pack is cleansed. If she shines, the pack bows." Mila walked toward the dark mouth of the cave. She passed Liam. He reached out, his fingers grazing her arm. "I love you," he choked out. "Wait for me," she whispered. She stepped through the waterfall and into the darkness. Inside, the air was cold and smelled of ozone and wet earth. In the center of the cavern, resting on a pedestal of natural obsidian, sat the moonstone. It was the size of a human heart, rough and jagged, pulsing with a faint, dull grey light. Myla approached it. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She could feel the power radiating off the stone, a low, humming vibration that made her teeth ache. "You are weak," a voice in her head whispered. "You are a servant. You are nothing." It was the voice of Mrs. Higgins. It was the voice of Tiffany. It was the voice of every person who had looked through her for 22 years. Mela closed her eyes. She thought of Liam in his wheelchair, alone in the ballroom. She thought of the moment she dropped the tray. She thought of the green fire of the poison burning in the cabin. "I am not nothing," she whispered to the darkness. "I am the one who stayed." She opened her eyes and slammed her hand down onto the stone. Pain. It wasn't heat. It was absolute cold. It felt like her veins were being filled with liquid nitrogen. The cold shot up her arm, seized her heart, and froze the air in her lungs. She opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Her vision went white. She felt her soul being ripped apart, examined, judged. Every lie she had ever told, every moment of fear, every secret shame was laid bare. "Why do you seek this power?" The voice was not human. It was ancient, vast, and feminine. To protect him, Myla projected the thought, screaming it with her mind. Not for the crown, not for the silk. For him. The cold intensified. Her skin began to crack. Frost patterns traced their way up her neck. She was dying. The Omega body wasn't built for this voltage. Outside, the pack watched the cave entrance. A minute passed. Then 2. "She's dead," Tiffany whispered from the back, a cruel smile touching her lips. "The stone killed her." Liam fell to his knees in the mud. He could feel their bond stretching, thinning, snapping. "No. Myla." He started to rise, to run into the cave, laws be damned. But then the ground shook. A beam of light, pure and blindingly white, exploded from the mouth of the cave. It pierced the waterfall, turning the cascading water into a curtain of diamonds. The light shot straight up into the night sky, connecting with the full moon above. The wolves covered their eyes, whining in terror. The power was suffocating. It wasn't the aggressive power of an alpha. It was the overwhelming, crushing weight of absolute purity. From the light, a figure emerged. Mila walked through the waterfall. She wasn't shivering. She wasn't wet. The water seemed to bend around her, refusing to touch her skin. Her simple white shift had been burned away, replaced by a gown of woven moonlight, shifting, translucent, and glowing. Her brown hair had turned a stark, shocking silver at the tips. But it was her eyes that made the elders gasp. They were no longer the color of slate. They were solid gold. She held the moonstone in her hand. It wasn't grey anymore. It was blazing like a captured star. Liam stood up, tears streaming down his face. He didn't run to her. He couldn't. The aura she was projecting forced him to bow his head. It was the majesty of a true Luna. Mila walked to the edge of the riverbank. She looked down at Elder Marcus, who was trembling so hard he dropped his staff. "You said an Omega could not hold the bond?" Mila's voice echoed, amplified by the magic. "You were right. The Omega is gone." She raised the stone. "I am the Luna." The entire pack, 500 wolves, dropped to their knees as one. It wasn't a choice. It was instinct. Even the trees seemed to bow in the wind. 1 hour later, the terror of the trial had transformed into a euphoric celebration. The pack was delirious with joy. They had witnessed a miracle. The Blackwood pack, long thought to be cursed with bad luck and a broken heir, had just been blessed by the goddess herself. The wedding ceremony was hastily moved to the ancient grove, a circle of redwood trees that had stood for 1,000 years. Lanterns floated in the air, suspended by the residual magic of the night. The air smelled of jasmine and ozone. Liam stood at the altar. He wore a black ceremonial tunic with silver embroidery. He watched Myla walk down the aisle of flower petals. She looked tired now, the golden glow in her eyes fading back to her warm grey. But she carried herself with a new grace. She was mortal again, but she was changed. She reached him, and he took her hands. They were warm. "You terrified me," Liam whispered, his voice thick. "I died 1,000 times while you were in that cave." "I told you," Myla smiled, squeezing his fingers. "I don't break easily." The high priestess, an old woman who had traveled from the mountains upon seeing the beam of light, stepped forward to bind their hands with a silk ribbon. "Tonight, we do not just join a man and a woman," the priestess intoned. "We join 2 halves of a broken soul, the shield and the heart." She looked at Liam. "Alpha Liam, your vows?" Liam looked at the crowd. He saw the faces of the people who had mocked him. He saw the servants who had once pitied him. Then he looked at Mila. "I grew up in a castle, but I was a prisoner," Liam began, his voice carrying clearly through the grove. "I was defined by what I couldn't do. I couldn't walk. I couldn't shift. I couldn't lead. I was the broken wolf." He paused, swallowing the lump in his throat. Then a girl with a tray of cider walked across a ballroom floor. She didn't look down at me. She looked at me, and in her eyes I wasn't broken. I was just waiting. He lifted Mila's hand to his lips. Mila, you didn't just give me my legs back. You gave me my dignity. You taught me that a true alpha isn't the one who can roar the loudest, but the one who is willing to endure the most for the ones he loves. I vow to spend every day of this second life you've given me making sure you never feel invisible again. I am yours. My pack is yours. My soul is yours. Sniffles broke out across the audience. Burly warrior wolves were wiping their eyes. Luna Mila, the priestess said gently. Your vows. Mila took a breath. She looked at the silver ribbon binding their wrists. I spent my life in the shadows, Mila said softly. I was taught that my place was to serve, to be silent, to be small. I thought strength was something you were born with, like blue blood or money. She looked up at Liam, her eyes shining with tears. But you showed me that strength is a choice. It's choosing to be kind when the world is cruel. It's choosing to fight when you are in pain. You are the strongest man I know, Liam Blackwood, not because you can crush stone, but because you survived the darkness without letting it turn your heart black. She stepped closer, placing her hand over his heart. I vow to be your peace when the world is loud. I vow to be your anchor when the storm comes, and I vow that no matter how high we rise, I will always be the girl who sees the wolf inside the man. I choose you, now and forever. Then I pronounce you mated, the priestess declared, Alpha and Luna, one flesh, one blood. Liam didn't wait. He pulled Mela into him, dipping her low, and kissed her. It wasn't a polite, ceremonial kiss. It was passionate, desperate, and full of a love that had clawed its way back from the brink of death. The pack erupted. Howls of joy ripped through the night, a chorus of 500 voices singing to the moon. The celebration raged on into the early hours of the morning. Music, dancing, and feasting filled the estate grounds. But high above the noise, on the private balcony of the Alpha's suite, Liam and Mila stood alone. Liam was sitting on the stone railing, his legs dangling over the edge, a casual display of the mobility he would never take for granted again. Mila stood between his knees, her head resting on his chest. He had wrapped his heavy coat around her shoulders to ward off the night chill. They watched the sunrise begin to bleed purple and gold over the horizon. The dead lands, where they had almost died, were visible in the distance, shrouded in mist. What do we do with them? Mila asked softly. Brody? Tiffany? The ones who ran? Liam stroked her hair, twirling a strand of the silver-tipped lock that the moonstone had left as a mark. We let them go, Liam said. Living with the knowledge of what they threw away is a worse punishment than anything I can do to them. Brody will spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, knowing that the cripple he mocked is sitting on his throne. Mila nodded, satisfied. She looked down at the estate below. She saw the staff, her old friends, mingling with the guests. She saw the barriers of rank dissolving, slowly but surely. We changed the world, didn't we? She whispered. You changed the world, Mila. Liam corrected her gently. I just held the door open. He hopped down from the railing and turned her to face him. The morning light caught the scars on his face, turning them from jagged lines into marks of character. Are you ready? He asked. For what? For everything. Liam grinned, a boyish, reckless grin that he hadn't worn in 10 years. The politics, the children, the life. Mela smiled back. It was the smile of a queen who had walked through fire and ice to claim her crown. I'm ready, she said. Liam scooped her up into his arms, bridal style. Mila laughed, the sound bright and free. He carried her back inside the room, kicking the balcony door shut behind them with his heel. The sun rose fully over the Blackwood estate, bathing the world in light. The shadows were gone. The broken wolf and the invisible girl had found their way home. And that is the incredible story of Liam and Myla. It's a reminder that true strength isn't about physical power or social status. It's about the resilience of the spirit. The women at the ball saw a wheelchair and turned away, blinding themselves to the heart of a king. Myla saw the human being, and in doing so, she unlocked a destiny that changed everything. In a world obsessed with appearances, be a Myla. Look deeper. Love harder. And never underestimate the quiet ones. They might just be the ones who save the world. What would you have done? If you were at that ball, would you have had the courage to approach Liam? Or would the pressure of the crowd have held you back? Be honest in the comments below. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that they are strong enough to overcome their scars. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Until next time, keep howling.